Alright, I just figured I'd go over a really quick way to sort of make this shape. And I'm not using reference, but obviously if you were, you would just, build this to the appropriate size. This is mostly just going for very, very rough. Alright, so I'm gonna build this, basically set up something like this. And if you sort of look at this, it basically is going like straight across here. So what I'm gonna do is just come into my top view and just kind of like hardcore approximate this basically, but I'm gonna grab the faces on this side and I am going to extrude them and just pull them straight out. And then again, if you were, working to orthographics, I would, line this up a little bit less terribly. But for now, that kind of sort of looks like approximately the shape I'm trying to make, so I'm gonna kind of call that decent-ish. I'll pull this out here, and then I'm just gonna grab these other faces and extrude them. Ooh, hello, what did I just grab? That didn't feel like a face. Was it a face? Whoop. Okay, yeah, cool. So grab these faces and just sort of, pull them up a little bit. Doing some kind of general shaping as I go, and this is obviously, like, pretty rough looking overall. But one thing you do want to make sure, particularly with these cutters, is that the blade itself is flat. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of loops in here. I'm going to at least define this as a sort of flat edge, and then come back and sort of twiddle with the rest shortly. And just kind of go through again and just add a little bit of shaping in here, not being super crazy picky about it. And then do basically, honestly, the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to grab these faces, I'm going to extrude them out. And this side, it basically goes to like more or less flat. So what I'm actually going to do is just sort of crush that down, be like, alright, here's my little lip. And then I'm going to grab this face down here and pull this down, come in, grab these faces, and just sort of, adjust them to whatever your reference is. I'll also come back and maybe crush this down a little bit, drag that out a little bit. Every time I'm like, I'm gonna do this temporary, it turns into some weird fancy thing, and I'm like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Alright, and then, yeah, so basically then you can just sort of, go down and shape the rest of the leg as needed. I am gonna cut in one more loop in here, because there is a little bit, if you look, sort of here, there's like a little bit of a curvy kind of thing going on, so I'm just gonna kind of like low-key recreate that here, come in with a little edge loop, and then what I'm going to do is basically just grab these two faces and just push them down a little bit, and that's going to give me that little tiny lip that, yet again, I'm not defining super terribly well in this, but is, it's there, so. And then you might come down, and again, this is like kind of curved a little bit, so do a little bit of shaping in here, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously like super crazy rough, but this is probably the easiest way to get something, I guess, halfway decent for this shape. And then if we wanted to do, there's like that little bevel in the blade. What I would probably do, this is actually the only picture I have of this on hand, so I'm kind of like winging this really hard right now. What I would probably do is come through and maybe just grab all of these vertices a little bit and sort of, oops. Actually, that probably is kind of close to what the shape is. And these just get progressively thinner the higher up you go. So I'm basically just kind of defining like, all right, here's my little blade, here's my little beveled area here. And this will be more obvious. Let me just assign a quick blend to this. Blend, blend, blend. Is that a blend? Yeah, that's a blend. All right, cool. And I've broken the model. You can see there's a little bit of clipping geometry from somewhere in here. Honestly, not entirely sure where, but anywho. Alright, apparently that kind of fixed it. Alright, but yeah, so I mean, that's just like I said, obviously really rough, but probably the quickest way you can go in and just sort of rough in this general shape. And then if you wanted to do, alright, I'll show you, I guess, two more things with this. So one is technically this area in the center is like a separate little piece, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is do an edit mesh and extract on this. What that's going to do is basically pull out those loops from the center, and then we can go ahead and edit mesh bridge this, and go ahead and do the same thing in here. Sorry. Mesh combine these two, then we can actually bridge them because they're actually part of the same piece. Do an edit mesh bridge. Cool. And now we have two separate pieces. And then if I wanted to mirror this, what I could do, and doesn't make a whole lot of sense to mirror as is because this is going to clip itself kind of crazy in a sec. Actually, that will fix probably a lot of my my weird issues. So I'm going to shrink this whole thing slightly, and then duplicate this, go on to the negative x is what I want here. And I'm going to go ahead and scale that on the negative 1x, and I think I also need to flip this on the y. No, actually that makes no sense. Cool. Yeah, so that is basically how you can mirror it, but then you'll notice, I do want to go ahead and freeze transformations. You'll notice that like this is clipping in the center, so this is again where looking at the reference will be really helpful because I do not have that in front of me except for this one image. It would probably make a lot of sense to go through and then like move this down or figure out how that's actually oriented on the actual clippers, so that isn't clipping quite as badly. So I imagine probably what would happen is like this would also come down a little bit and then this would shift down slightly. But doing this, basically you have these nice clippers that are able to sort of bend in. Alright, and then for the spring shape, I'm just gonna, why did this wasn't supposed to turn into me like actually modeling this. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a polygon primitive helix, which I will create. Let's see if I can do it on the right axis. Yes! Haha, I did it. Alright, so obviously I'm very much not doing a whole lot to refine this shape at present. I'm just kind of gonna rough in something that looks vaguely spring-like. But what you can do, there is like it looks like a tiny little bend in this one. What you can do is come in with a deform nonlinear bend and go ahead and go into the curvature and just bend that a little bit. So you'll notice if you look in the perspective view that it's like obviously bending very much not the direction you want, so you can just physically rotate that little bend handle and then rotate it in whichever direction you need. So this looks like 90 apparently for me in the Y and the Z. And then be like, wow, that's a really aggressive curvature, and come back and make it a little less so it's not so insane looking. And theoretically, I should be able, yeah, I can still modify my curve a little bit, so I can make that, you know, a little bit skinnier. It's probably still definitely way too aggressive, but, you know, that's a quick way to get a little bit of bend in a helix without stretching the ever-living crap out of it. But yeah, so that's Pliers in 7 minutes and 55 seconds, more or less, kind of. So hopefully that was helpful.